All right, guys. Topic number 3 comes from Patreon. This is from Michael Taylor. Where's the segue there?
Whenever you need like something epic, that's what you play.
All right.
Patreon made him think of PA words that start with PA, which brought him the park.
Got
which brought him
it.
the Jurassic Park. I think that's how it happened.
I'm thinking of Park City, Utah.
Oh, it's a nice place. I've been there.
What the fuck is? Where's Park City?
Olympics, yo.
Park
Fun.
City isn't it where Sundance is, right?
Wasn't there the Olympics there that one time? Or is that where you went? Is that where Damon and Nate went to see the?
I saw a
Shaun
Skyrim
White
there.
game. Oh, okay.
You're talking about Rack
Give me
City?
a map, Kevin. I have
No,
idea
Rack
where-
City. What's Rack City?
It's a rap song. All right.
Rack City.
Hey, Greg, Colin, and Tim.
Wayne's
I'm going to
World.
add Alfredo. I'm assuming he's going to talk to you too.
Yeah.
We as gamers have a great admiration for stories in games. I've often wondered, though, if our metrics might be a little skewed. When you consider the relative differences caused by player agency to things like pacing, can we really judge the stories of games in the same way we do those of, say, movies? We get to take part in the story of a game and through our actions possibly change them. What are some of the unique challenges faced by gaming when it comes to storytelling, and what are some ways games have or could overcome them? Thanks for everything. Michael Taylor. Thank you, Michael Taylor.
For your support on patreon.com/kindafunnygames.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael Taylor. Jurassic Park.
Park City, Utah now. Rack City leads to Wayne's World because he had a gun rack without a gun.
That's
there.
true. Park City, bitch. Park City, bitch.
Yeah. Judging stories the way we judge movies, yeah, there's an inherent problem there. And the fact that, yeah, games aren't movies, movies aren't games, but we always try to connect the two, which is not the best idea to do. But yeah, I understand what he's saying, right? If a movie has a slow start, you're still like, well, I've invested 30 minutes. I'll see this movie out. And then, it gets so good at the end. There's a payoff at the end. And people always try to apply that to games and reviewing games, right? Of like, the game sucked for 14 hours. Yeah, but did you finish it? Did it get better? And like, that doesn't count. That's not the same time, trade-off there. If the first 30 minutes of a game suck and I stop playing it, then yeah, I'm out 3 hours or whatever.
43 hours.
Yeah.
Approximately
For every game I play. I'm rubbing Fredo's leg with my leg, by the way. So yeah, it's not apples to apples, right? It is apples to oranges.
Yeah.
How we overcome that? I don't know. I think as consumers, you have to be more invested in what you're buying and stick it through, right? When it gets to the point of like, well, I always talk about The Last of Us, right? And the fact that, there was a gamble there for Sony and for Naughty Dog, right? Of Uncharted 3 finishes, and now we're going to put out Last of Us, and hopefully the audience and the consumer is smart enough that by putting a sticker on the box that says from the creators of Last of Us, you understand what that means. Or, I'm sorry, from the creators of Uncharted, you know what that means, right? It is a new IP. It is a new thing. It is them going off in a different direction that's, foreign. You look at Activision, you look at a lot of the other big companies, right? They want sequels. They want proven concepts that get out annualized every year, get more and more money. And so for you to go off and do this, you have to get it to a point where the consumer understands or listens to word of mouth or review sites or YouTube or whatever that this game is good because, or there is a lineage here with these developers because, and there's a reason there, and that's how you connect it all. I think.
What do you think, Fredo?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Kind of feel like you can't judge it the same way you judge movies. If a game sucks early on, it just sucks. It does. I mean, there's not too many games that I play where I'm just like, all right, well, the mechanics do get better. Like,
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The mechanics pretty early on, right?
Terrible, then it's terrible. I don't know. I played through all of Uncharted recently and Last of Us, and I thought they were great games. I thought they were amazing games. So, I don't know. I'm still gathering thoughts on this topic, to be honest.
He's collecting data.
Okay. Yeah. Colin.
I think the reason we compare movies to games so much is because gamers are desperate for games to be taken seriously.
Right.
And I think that games are very young still. We're like just getting out of, as many people have noted in the past, like we're out of our like silent picture era now. So like where we are right now is still pretty young and pretty primitive. I think that there is some parallel nature between story and movies and games because they're told with the same conduits of protagonists and antagonists and plot and all this kind of thing. The way games have, or where games have the advantage, I think, is in pacing. Because pacing doesn't necessarily have to be fast or slow. Pacing can be very environmental. You brought up The Last of Us, which is a great example. If you played The Last of Us just beat to beat, it would be 4 or 5 hours long. But the fact of the matter is it gives you these huge places, like Billstown, for instance, where like you can just explore it and let the environment tell you a story. And people that watch movies do not have that. Like, think about The Breakfast Club, like one of the great, I think, storytelling movies of the last 40 years or something, a movie I hold very dear to my heart. We get the story through these kids' experience in a library during detention and their interactions with each other and the interaction with the principal and kind of just like this teen angst kind of shit going on. But we would be able to learn a lot about them if we were given 15 hours by just walking around the school and being able to go into their lockers and read their notebooks and talk to their parents and do all this kind of stuff. But when you see a movie, you have to have a tight experience, and you can't do that. Games let you have an experience that's not tight. That's why something like The Witcher is so exciting, because it's going to be 200 or 300 hours long. And you're going to not get literal story for 200 or 300 hours, just like you don't in Fallout 3 and just like you don't in Skyrim. That's the beauty of a video game. So I think people are being too literal when they talk about story in games, and I don't think it's as pigeonholed as it is in movies. I think that there's a lot of freedom because you can do whatever you want to tell the story. So whether you're playing a game like Ori and the Blind Forest, which is very emotional, doesn't really talk to you, as we experienced in our Let's Play on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, or whether you're playing a game like The Last of Us that is very protagonist-driven, and there really is no antagonist in the game. And, unless you want to talk about just everyone else is the antagonist, maybe, or the world. It's about those characters, but you still, when Ellie's going through the record store and like talking about music, or she finds the broken arcade machine and starts playing it, or you learn about her. And there would only be a finite amount of those moments in a 3-hour movie or a 2.5-hour movie that would let you do that. So I don't think games are hamstrung at all. I think games are in a great place for storytelling. The ability of a game to tell a story is going to be heightened as time goes on, as people explore and find new things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about player agency. Yeah, player agency is overrated, and I think that player agency is actually overdone.
What does that mean?
Player agency is choice, and in a very literal way, it's just the choice. And series that do that really well are exciting. We know Fallout 4 will do that, because that's just what it does. We know that Mass Effect 4 is going to do that, and we are excited about those games, but it's not necessary. Right. The Last of Us doesn't let you make any fucking choice at all, including at the very end of the game when you want to, because it's the fucking story.
It's telling you a story. That's the thing. When you see creators and developers owning that part of it, right? Where and that's what I always talked about when we talked about Last of Us. No spoilers. But when you get to the end, I expected there to be a prompt, and there wasn't, and it ended, and that was the story. And I remember texting Neil and being like, "Oh my, what the hell?" And that was the story they wanted to tell, right? And what's exciting when you talk about it, and especially when you talk about how young we are, right, is what you're seeing now in the indie market with these games that are coming out, where people are telling you stories and doing these different things, whether it be Gone Home, whether it be Coming Out Simulator, whether it be something that's not about being gay. There's plenty of games that are those are the ones that are spring to my mind in terms of games doing something different and telling you a story, right? There are all these different things there. So now you think about the kids who are growing up right now, coming of age, playing those games and thinking about being a game developer, and what are they going to make, right? It's the same way of like, how do we change everything? You just have to age it out. You know what I mean? You have to. The video game violence argument ages out when everybody who grew up playing games is now an old person in Congress. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Same thing with stories now. As the people who are growing up, the people who made Last of Us, the people who made all these other amazing Fallout or whatever, grew up, playing Mario. You know what I mean? These were their games that meant something to them, and they keep evolving, you keep changing. So now the people who are playing Last of Us, what does that mean for what they're going to make when they get here, and how they think about stories and how they think about games?
Well, it's so interesting to think even just about stories, like stories in movies versus stories in games, and like with movies are stories, right? Like you can't really have a movie without a story. I mean, I can't really think of an example. You can have
Fast
games.
and Furious.
I hate you so much. I can't even think of an example of a movie that doesn't have a story, but there's a bunch of games that don't have stories or have stories that don't matter because it's about the gameplay. I can't think of anything about a movie that you can say, oh, it's not about the story, it's about the effects.
The explosions.
You know what I mean? Like, I guess there is some of the
Transformers.
Well, I mean, that's true. That is true. But like, even then,
people use that as an excuse of like, well, the story doesn't matter, but the story does get you from A to B. You have to have a fucking protagonist.
Yeah, like you need to have a story. Whereas I feel in games you don't need to have a story.
Sure.
So I don't think we could ever compare video games and movies together. But I do think that there are more. The games like Uncharted and Last of Us and Gone Home and all those games, you can compare those to movies because they are about plot, and their plot matters a lot.
Yeah.
And what's interesting there is like you think about the story, and you were talking about Last of Us giving you this ability to like learn, and like Gone Home is another one where you're like, there's not so much a narrative. Then you go to narrative versus story. And then like, what's the difference there between the narrative being the actual plot points of this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Sure. Story being more, here's all the different things that create this experience. And I don't know if like movies can do the same thing that games do in that sense. Like, can movies have that level? Like, what's an example of a movie that has that story element to it, not just narrative and plot?
I don't know. I think people would look at something like The Shining or something maybe as something that has like all this deep hidden meaning if you found it. And there's a documentary about it. It's kind of fucking crazy, actually. But
yeah, the documentary is totally fucking whack.
But, you know, but this is the fucking exciting thing about games and how young they are and where they're going. Movies are always going to be movies. That's not to disparage them. It's just to say, like, you are going to sit in a fucking chair and you're going to watch it. And that's it. That is all a movie is ever going to be. You know? Ever. But when you play a game, it's going to be about way more than that. It's going to be about your interaction with it. And when you interact with something, there's various, if not infinite, permutations of the way you deal with it. You know, a game like Castlevania 2 is a great example. Like, it's a game that a lot of maybe our younger viewers haven't played or even really heard of. But Simon's Quest is Castlevania 2. That's an NES game. And what's so cool about it is that it's a non-linear game. And it's about its story is about finding Dracula's body parts to put him back together to kill him again. But like you don't, and that's because Dracula, like when Simon Belmont killed Dracula at the end of Castlevania, he was given a curse. The only way to get rid of the curse is to revive him and hit him with a stake or whatever, and so like he has to put them all back together and then kill him again. That's the story, and you can go through it really quick and find the 5 body parts at 5 different mansions, go to the old castle, revive him, and fucking kill him. It's fun. But the game is scary. It has a day-night cycle, and it's non-linear, and there are secrets all over the fucking place. It's like really obtuse. And the game, I was talking to someone recently, I'm like, it's one of the scariest games I've ever played in my life. And it's actually unsettling because of the music and the day-night cycle and the fact that no one really talks to you, and it's just weird. But you'll never have a movie like that. You never have a TV show like that because you're not interacting with it like that. You might be able to pause it frame by frame and be like, you didn't really enjoy the background or listen to the music or you missed something. But there's a one-dimensional kind of aspect to movies that, again, it's not meant to insult movies. It's just to say that like games are next level. Games in 50 years are going to be telling extraordinary stories and doing extraordinary things. At the same time, we shouldn't disparage the way things are done more conventionally. We were reading a story on Colin and Greg Live today about one of the guys that made Ori and the Blind Forest making fun of World War II games and saying that like he wants to make something more like Schindler's List as opposed to like these kind of bro shooter World War II games. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of bullshit because like there is a room for a game like that. And I'm excited about that. We were talking about Valiant Hearts, which is awesome, a World War I game, a great war game. And there's nothing wrong with storming Normandy in 1944 because it's fucking fun. You know what I mean? And like, how else are you going to do it? Mm-hmm. Like you being the fucking dude who's storming Normandy and fucking killing the Nazis, that's fun. So like, there's nothing wrong with that either. Yeah. I think sometimes we get a little pretentious the way we talk about story. That's the fucking big problem. There's a story to be told in a first-person shooter, and it's totally fine. I enjoyed Advanced Warfare and its story. I thought it was really interesting and silly. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. Yeah. So when we talk about story, when we talk about player agency, which was like the obsession, and you saw it kind of roll out over a few years, and now it's gone again. Like, that's fine, but let's not get too pretentious about the way we talk about stories either, because there's going to be room for saving the princess stories in Mario, and there's going to be room for storming the beaches in Normandy, and there's going to be room for exploring a house and figuring out that you're playing as a or learning about a gay girl or whatever else we did in Gone Home. There's room for all of that. The thing
don't put spoilers in the comments. I've been beating the Gone Home drum forever. Get off your ass and play it.
Oh, whatever. If you have, first of all, it's 2 hours. You haven't played it yet. It's kind of on you, but you should. But that's kind of the thing, is that we just have to make room for everything. The thing is that Uncharted and The Last of Us, which you brought up 3 examples of things you can compare to movies. You said Uncharted, I think, obviously, and then The Last of Us, I think, again, obviously, we're going to get a movie. Gone Home can never be a game, or it can never be a movie, rather. It's always going to be a game, because that's all about environmental storytelling and your own pace. You don't even have to fucking do anything in that game, really. You just have to find very certain things. You can just hit all the check boxes in the game, and
you could stumble to the final room, like find the thing that says go to there, and you go there, and it's over. You can beat the game in like 5 minutes.
And that's uniquely game. Yeah, you know what I mean, and that's exciting. The thing is that there's no game in my mind that doesn't have some sort of story, even if there's not a story in it. Yeah. Resogun has a story. Like, it's just, and some games are made more exciting by you reading into it a little bit. We were talking about Mario 2 in the Smash Brothers topic, and like, there's a story there to be told about a dream and a dream world and all those kind of things. If you want to explore it and think about it, there's a story in Pac-Man if you really wanted to think about it.
He finds
it might be a drug dream, but it's like
he's chasing the ghosts of his past.
So I don't know. I storytelling is in every game, but it's to me, games are most like books, not movies. And I think we should start maybe talking about them more in literary terms as opposed to cinematic terms, because they're never going to be movies, and movies are never going to be games. But when you read a good book, you're seeing what you want to see. You're doing it kind of in sequence, but you're kind of learning as you go. Sometimes things are lost on you the first time you read it, and then it comes up again later in the book, and you didn't realize it at that time. I don't know. I don't think we talk about them in literary terms enough. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. See, I think that's interesting, but I think that goes back to what I was saying about just that's really for the plot heavy games, because I feel like so many of the other games, like they're more relatable to movies than books, because so much of it is based on camera angles and voice acting and all that stuff. Like that is kind of what creates the experience of the game. Like that is what the game, if you're reviewing the game, you're going to be reviewing those things about it. Like that's how important they are. Whereas with the book, you wouldn't be reviewing those things because there's not voice acting. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But,
I'm sorry. Sure.
yeah, there you go.
I like
All
the
right.
satisfied grin.
Anyone else have anything else to add on this?
I just think movies in general just give you a variety of things that you can experience that movies can't, right? So
You mean games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, the movies show you things games can't?
Yeah. Sorry.
Movies show you things games can, or games show you things movies can't?
Games show you things.
Gotcha.
Thank you. All right, good.
Yeah. And there's a variety, right? You have your games like Counter-Strike, which is a game you'll play endlessly, but there's really no story there. Or you'll have ones like Destiny, where it's a failed story, but you know, you kind of split your audience there. Some people still play it, some people still don't. And then you have games like the Telltale Walking Dead games, where like, you know, if you're watching the show, it's like, oh my goodness, all these hard choices are being made. But then when you're actually playing, it's like, I have to make this choice. I don't think I can make this choice, but I have to I have to decide. So.
Timer's counting down. Got to say something.
Exactly.
Yeah, games are so interesting because they make you the character, and you do need to make those decisions and stuff in a lot of ways. Like even if you're role playing as this character, like when things happen, you see it as it happening to you. I think Pokemon's a great example of this, where it's like the plot of Pokemon is pretty thin, like overall.
There's monsters in the grass.
You're a
capture
kid,
'em.
go be the very best, whatever. But it's like because of all the NPCs around and talking to everybody, you can get this like there's so many layers, and you start thinking about like the world, and like they created the world in such a insane way where everything revolves around these little monsters. And like there's backstories to so many of them, and like the whole Mewtwo subplot, and like they tried to create a new one, and like they failed by trying to clone Mew, and what happened? There's this like abandoned, burned down science building. What's a science building called?
Laboratory.
There you go. There's like this burned down laboratory and stuff, and you're like kind of going around exploring it and finding all these like ancient tracks of like what was the Mew experiments. It's like that's super cool. And then to then play Gold and Silver, and it's like you're on a whole new world, you're a whole new kid or whatever. And then at the end of it, to face Red, who was the protagonist from the first one. In a lot of ways, it's like it's this weird moment of like I'm facing myself from the last game, and it's just like, oh my god, like this is insane.
That's games. That's the true power of games, is putting you in somebody else's experience, and that's what I think where Colin's talking about books too. Books do a great job of that. If you read somebody's story and they're telling it to you, but they're telling it in your head, so you're in that section, and that's why your heart will beat real fast. And movies can give you that experience, but like it's more like, oh man, I love this character. I hope nothing bad happens to him. It's not the same as I don't want anything bad to happen to me. You know what I mean? Like when you're in a game and you're down to your last 3 bullets, and you know there's all these enemies over. There's that. When you're in Gone Home and I'm running house to house just trying to figure out what is going on, and not because I'm worried about this person. Can I help this person? Are they in trouble? Kind of thing. There's that. And then like, you know, the multitude of other games, you get to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, and that's why it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Or you have games like Arma, where people just kind of have this open world, and they create their own little stories, right? People go in there and like, oh, I'm gonna role play as a cop, or I'm gonna role play as a drug lord, and
that's
I'm just
interesting.
gonna randomly interact with these people, right? Or just like you go in there, if you guys are cops, you're just like, all right, well, there's a cocaine field, there's this torn up town, like where am I gonna go? Like we're just gonna run into someone, and who knows what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, that's like role playing in a completely different sense, where it's like you are creating your character.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing where you're talking about games that don't have stories or whatever. You make your own when you play. When you play Minecraft, right? Like when people play Minecraft together, they are making their own stories of this village they did, and then this time the creeper came in and exploded this or da da da.
And I think the biggest example of that is actually EVE Online, and we could dedicate a whole show to EVE Online and like how fucking crazy it is. But like there are no rules in that game. So like there are rules in terms of the confines of how you deal with your ship and all that kind of stuff, but like nothing is off limits. So like people rip each other off in that game, and like the real world, and like all sorts of like crazy shit happens in that game because you know CCP from Iceland
Did you see them when you were there?
No, I didn't. One of the biggest employers in Iceland, which is funny. Their whole thing is like, this is the world, and there are people that are like bankers that like actually take other people's money, and like you trust that they're going to give it back to you, for instance. But there's nothing compelling them to do that. You know, like there's all sorts of cool stuff in that, like where they're like they don't want to fight, they want to be the banker, they want to make ships or trade and stuff like that. That's awesome. You know, like you can't do that in a movie.
Yeah.
Arma has people that are just medics. You literally just call and they just drive around and revive you.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
We got to do some Let's Plays on that.